macro and decision-making on where to rotate is not really one of their main strengths.
All right, well, guys, our pick and bans are ready here for game number 1. We're headed into Towers of Doom for our second series of today with TheOne versus KSV Black. And we'll be first ban going over to TheOne. The map choice is KSV Black's.
Now, I want to tell you one thing, guys. TheOne has a ranged assassin player called Lucky.
Okay.
And as you said earlier, almost called you Tetcher there. As you said,
I mean, you can call me Tetcher. You know, it's a bit of an honor when I get to cast a Chinese team and be Tetcher.
for China. So, no, Dred, as you perfectly mentioned, Falstad is such a staple in the Asian regions, right? Both China and Korea. And Lucky is sitting at a 100% win rate from HGC China. He played it 7 times in the regular season before this Eastern Clash. And there's something about Lucky that makes him just stand out so much. I'm not sure, though, if he really gets to play the Falstad on this battleground against KSV Black, because as we mentioned as well, teams like KSV Black find good methods on how to shut down a Falstad, how to punish that pick.
But I already want to bring to point, or bring to light, look at this timing on this decision-making from KSV Black. We usually, when we see them take this long of consideration, especially against an opponent that I think that it should be favored, you heard the confidence on the interview before this. This does not look to me like, unless there's somebody's mouse is broken, like it is a, you know, we have the confidence level. They put a lot of thought into it, a major adjustment with a Stukov removal.
The Stukov removal here, I think, is just simply what we like to call a throwaway ban at HGC Korea, meaning that they think it's a strong pick for the map. They would not want to face it, but more than removing it as a strong, high-priority pick, they know that Tracer was one of the heroes they wanted to gain. They're not willing to give away, for example, a Genji or a Maiev, and then also not have the picks they're looking for. So if they ban another top-tier hero here, because we only have 2 bans and 1 ban at the first phase, then they might find themselves in trouble, because the first pick does go to TheOne. So this is a safer rotation. We could see our very first and perhaps even last Maiev of the tournament here, right now.
This is so interesting, too, because the normal season for HGC China, it ended a little bit earlier because of the Lunar New Year.
Yeah.
So not a lot of those Chinese teams are actually familiar with playing Maiev. You know, so sometimes against those Chinese teams, leaving her open may be a solid choice because they never practiced her in the regular season. They never played her much in scrims. So there we go. It's not getting picked up. Other teams in Europe, for example, they would have immediately
insta-lock the Maiev.
There we go, baby.
Yeah, Maiev Junkrat. I can't help but wonder. So I want to bring. Okay, so I called out, you know, maybe the lack of confidence by KSV. But what I did want to also bring to that point is that if you think you are that much better of a team, which I don't think it's crazy to assume that KSV feels that way in this kind of matchup against such a young team like TheOne, that you go, I'm not even going to ban objectively powerful things or even responsive ones. I just, you know, maybe I don't want to deal with the Stukov silence, and it's not even so much to the map, it's just the fear of, like, this is pretty hard to deal with, and I think this is the only way we can lose. I can tell you in the past, like, a lot of teams in North America used to view Zeratul as that type of hero. It's like, you can just win the game if you just hit a good void. So it's like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm better than you. I'm going to take that away. But I also feel like now it was a bit of possibly research call-out that TheOne would not be willing to commit to the Maiev.
It's really interesting, too, because in Korea, first pick Genji has been reliably shut down usually with second rotation Uther picks, because Uther is very rarely first banned. They chose the Junkrat. I expected to see the Uther come through here. Maiev, Rich has an insanely good reputation on the Maiev in Korea, in Hero League, solo queue, and before his role swap, people were saying, okay, he's going to be one of his best heroes, right? But he's also played extensively a lot of Junkrat. This could be a position where we see Rich swap off of range to go back to the Maiev here. I'm really excited to see if that's actually going to be the case, because remember, Rich is famous for his soul laning because of his mechanical prowess. He's considered by most to be the best player.
Like, there's no way this is a serious Zeratul ban.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. It's very rarely seen. Now, we have seen Abathur plus Zeratul in the past in Korea, but this is kind of an odd one because they've already picked the Genji. They've got the Malfurion here. Zeratul just doesn't really suit this composition.
It would be just that very, you know, all-in one-shot, high-risk trade-off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's unheard of, especially with a reset opportunity, isolation, get the one-shot, but definitely very, very risky. And it does feel like, again, KSV having that, we're better than you, remove high-risk heroes. Stukov, Zeratul are the ones that they feel sit at the top. What do we see from TheOne, though?
I think the Uther ban it just feels so obvious, right? Sure, he doesn't empower Maiev or Junkrat specifically, but he's so strong against Genji, and has been, if you watch Korean VODs, almost always the go-to pick against Genji, regardless of who he's with. And, you know, Uther can empower a follow-up Grey main pick in the next rotation as well. I just feel like it's the obvious ban here.
I mean, there is a cute little synergy between Maiev and Uther as well. If you make it into the late game past 16, if you provide armor to her with every single heal by Uther, you get the armored assault value if they want to go that route. So that's pretty dangerous.
That's
but
true.
I agree with you. I think it makes a lot of sense to basically prevent any saving panic buttons from Uther. When Genji goes in, he wants to go for the reset. A Divine Shield or a Cleanse could even really ruin your day.
One thing that I was originally considering, because of the high Junkrat value that we see from KSV Black normally, and normally we see, especially with Korea, the Dahaka versus Junkrat mismatch and a lot of priority into that, and it kind of deterred that. But the one going a different route by picking the Abathur Global instead, there is a situation where I just wonder what the laning matchup is for KSV Black. I don't think it's concerning, but I do think that they're going to have to maybe put some more consideration to it, because depending on what the one goes with, that lane is not going to be advantageous for anyone. Maiev, generally speaking, is going to be gank-oriented, not want to be on the solo, especially committing to the Garrosh heavy kill control in the 1-4. And then Junkrat is very susceptible to any ganks whatsoever, especially when they have the Abathur hat there. So, again, I'm not saying this is like a huge problem, but it's definitely something that's got to be lingering in the back of the mind in this draft.
We've seen a lot of gank attempts with Rhaegar in the solo lane when it's a lost matchup, and also with Tychus specifically from MVP, or formerly MVP Black, KSV Black now. So I think Tychus is a potential final pick here for KSV Black, but it really depends on what the one is running right now in terms of tanks, Kendrick.
And now I want to see what Hugo is going to play. We mentioned him briefly before. He's not really a Genji player.
Yeah.
He does play Illidan. That is the only melee assassin he likes to play. Other than that, his go-to heroes are Sonya and Leoric. Would they really make a lot of sense up to this point here? I remain a little bit skeptical. So is it time for Hugo to maybe bust out something completely new, or is he going to fall back on something that he already knows he's good at?
I will say that Leoric stands out as the most optimal, generally speaking, but I don't think I want to see it. And I'm glad to actually see this. I was just going to say that I think Leoric is what everybody at home goes, I haven't seen Illidan in a hot minute. Why in the hell would I see the Illidan picture? But I cannot say that. Like, into the composition that we see KSV Black already select, that if you pick the Leo, he's just going to be in Ghost form. You are going to see massive trade value throughout this game, and I don't mean that in a complimentary sense. So I think identifying that, ignoring it, and even though debatably the Illidan, again, still has some of those kind of struggling factors by not having a burst healer with him, I would far rather see them go, you know what, we're playing our style. At least game number one, this is the one just going, time's up, let's do this.
What's really interesting to me about the final pick of the Arthas is they could have actually grabbed Tyrael as well to make this like a really ultimate scary comp, but Arthas does allow Illidan to chase targets better.
Yeah.
We're going to take a look at our predictions, of course. Dread and I have gone for KSV Black. So, Kendrick, why don't you explain yourself on the one prediction? Why don't you give your explanation?
I kind of knew he was going for the Illidan, obviously, so I just want to see the whole goodness that is Hugo. He's had a couple of astounding plays in the regular season. I think he's an absolute boss, and I can't wait to see what the one are going to bust out. As I said earlier, they're the mini version of KSV Black, so I really want to see, them bringing on the heat and turning it on.
I'm just purely laughing at the fact that, Wolf, we're the second series in this tournament, and the first time that Korea is playing anybody other than Taiwan, he goes, explain yourself, Kendrick. Immediately, you'd have doubt in Korea, explain yourself. It took
I just wanted to see the justification. We saw the fan vote is massively in favor of KSV Black as well. But I'm going to throw it over to you guys, Kendrick and Dreadnought, to cast our first game of the second series tonight in just a moment. The one versus KSV Black.
Well, you know what they say, Dread. You can't spell China without NA, and we all know what NA did at the Western Clash. So I'm pumped and excited to see.
Are we referring to when North America beat MVP Black in one game on Tower 2?
I'm not sure if they ever did that, but
I was just wondering if that was what we're going with, because oftentimes we North American fans love to bring back up the idea. It's like, do you remember that one time Roll20 did a thing? And I just can't help but be like, do you remember that one time the next game the exact same composition was ran and KSV Black looked at it and was like, yeah, this is over, it's done. It's like, I'm all down to be able to support the hopes and dreams, but KSV Black, they're a team and a caliber of their own. Depending on what, kind of windows over the past 2 to 3 years of competitive heroes, they are amazing players, and they're looking to bring the fight here to the one.
I think if there is a point in time, though, for a Chinese team to maybe potentially take off a map of them, or maybe even get the whole game, it is now. They have looked weak as never before in the Korean split, and I think it's time for them to reinvent themselves. They tried to do that with a role swap. We said that Kyocha, for example, is now the offlaner, used to be a support, and Sake, and he was very vocal about his own performance during the interviews. He was saying that as long as he performs well, as long as he's playing well, his team cannot lose.
Yeah, that was also, by the way, what we just saw there, a very great gank attempt from both sides there. The fact that, the one getting caught out in rotations a little bit slower, that generally speaking is, much like we saw in the first series here today, it's the pace at which the Korean teams play at is very hard to match, and rotations are the first element and area you kind of see that weakness. But the fact that we saw almost a kill on Kyocha on that side soak there, and the pressure being applied from the one, I agree with you. Maybe this is the moment that the one is able to kind of get that, since the last time we saw a team put up, a Chinese team put up those kind of games against KSV Black was in fact under the title of V-Star. Yeah, we saw it in the previous set as well. LM putting quite up the show here against Tempest in the first game on Towers of Doom, securing first blood, actually having a level lead.
Yeah, actually having a slight experience lead there as well. So I think Towers of Doom is a great battleground for teams like the one to maybe get a little bit of momentum rolling. And if you follow the playoffs here in HGC China, momentum is all they need. If they're in the zone, if they're feeling well and comfortable, there's hardly much that can stop them here.
Well, the man who's going to have to be in the zone here, I feel like for sure, is Hugo on Illidan, because there's a lot of crowd control post-10 team fights that are going to be very concerning that he's going to have to kind of dance around, but that is really the name of the game for Illidan, no matter how much crowd control is. It's just that mainly the Garrosh is the biggest fear there. Maiev is going to be something to keep in mind as well. We see the nice root being used there. Rich having to use the passive vault. He's falling pretty low, turn around, getting out the Q, but that is a kill response here for the one, but they are not done. KSV Black finds one for TheOne. Hit the root, reset here for Meng.
Yeah, and Meng is a player we almost forgot to talk about. He is an absolute beast on the Genji. It's one of his... There we go, though. Zato is piecing out here on the Malfurion, a great concussion mine. And that is, of course, the trickery that KSV Black is able to execute at any given moment. But Meng on that Genji is definitely a threat that the Korean team should be on the lookout for.
25 seconds out from our altar phase here. First one of the game. With the 3 altar phase in this position, Abathur compositions have a very interesting decision-making. I don't want to say that there's a standard that they should follow. It very much is how much information do you have, how much do you see on the map, which KSV is already considering, wiping the wave and then rotating, splitting out. Notice how everybody moved backwards before moving to their lane, just to be able to rid as much information as possible. And it's just reacting to what your opponents are doing. KSV, they commit to the top right, have Maiev as the protector, Abathur feigning and looking like he questionably wants to pick it up for himself, as the rest of the one contest here on bottom.
Yeah, he definitely wants to buy a little bit of time, maybe lure the Malthael into checking it out whether the Slugger is anywhere near to be found. And looks like he's a little bit safe, though. But Malthael's not fully committing. He wants to maybe see what else can be achieved on the map. In the meantime, Hehe on that Arth is a little bit in pressure. Sake now getting focused down by Hehe as well. And Meng actually is the main target.
Hugo comes in. Meng is falling pretty low, but Rich has got to be the one who's careful there. Ends up using the Shadow, getting the follow-up. Junkrat is going to be the first to drop. It's a chase there from Hugo.
That's a
with that Abathur hat, the Adrenal Overload, using and relying on that to get the kills. But look at the split here. The one is so separated from one another. Hugo comes back, tries to get an answer, goes in onto Kyocha.
Going back in. Okay, Hugo not really backing off, but here comes Rich. Took a healing fountain there, took some good healing as well. And with those resets on the Fan of Knives, that's all ability damage. Dread, Illidan, although he can evade, he cannot block the damage.
That's a really good point that you bring up, and that is something they've got to consider as well based on that lockdown, right? The fact that Maiev does have auto-attack dependent utility spells, right? But you don't look at the core of her DPS, at least in most cases, through that. It is very much what she provides through that utility, which Illidan, he has tools to be able to dodge it, but the fact that he has to second-guess himself at any point, generally speaking, is going to be what they get to be able to get an advantage in the fight. I like the KSV's kind of feigning interest in towards this invade, but Hugo's looking to try and turn it around, understanding that maybe too much of members displayed on the map from KSV, but they're just going to back out. Yeah, Illidan can be quite the mean foe and opponent to face for Maiev. As you said, when he activates his evasion, he can become a target of the tether. He will just dodge it, and all that value is potentially going to go to waste here. And if you think about it, there aren't really that many typical hard corners to the Illidan here. We don't have an Arthas, we don't have that many stuns available. So let's really see how much freedom KSV Black is going to give over to the Illidan through the course of the game. And Illidan is interesting in synergy with Abathur because he's also, he synergizes with Abathur, but he also removes a counter, well, at least when Illidan was meta, because the amount of threat he provides to the front walls, and knowing that Abathur, generally speaking, never wants to lose those front walls consistently. Not only does it hurt his ability to soak, but giving that kind of XP and, again, capitalizing on the lack of body, lack of pressure he provides on the map in the earlier stages. So that's the trade-off between those two is great, but what I'm trying to say with this here is that I can't help but feel like I would have liked to see a couple more moments where maybe that Illidan plus the Abathur hat is more problematic, especially for the side soak problem I was trying to highlight in the draft here with the Maiev, the Junkrat. All of those are very vulnerable on their own. If they're dancing with that Abathur hat Illidan, that should be a Hugo kill.
Yeah, and also the composition for the one is oftentimes a little problematic for the Abathur player, because who do you prioritize with your support? Do you go in the Genji when he goes in? Do you go for the Illidan? And oftentimes that can lead to a little bit of confusion. Here we see a team fight break down. There we go. The Howling Blast is good. In the meantime, Rich is the first one to fall, and the one is now in full momentum.
Hey, it's keeping the slow on to Kyoto. A lot of self-sustain there. Mang getting the Abathur hat, getting the shield, building him up a little bit. That's reset one. Sake very, very low. Hugo getting flipped over. Not going to get the evasion to be able to survive. If reset, or excuse me, Mang gets a reset on the Sake. He goes in, he gets it, he flips over, and that is going to be a 3-for-1 trade in favor of TheOne. Second seed out of China here versus your reigning world champs. That was a level down when that team fight started, Kendrick.
You know, they don't play like a rookie team. They don't play like a team that is on the first big stage for the first time. They play like a seasoned veteran team facing one of the biggest names Korea has to offer. They show no respect. Mang feels super comfortable on that Genji, dashes in and out, goes to safety like it was the easiest thing in the world to do. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. That was a good team fight, no doubt, but still, the experience is dead even.
And it's one of those situations where Illidan is very good in the early game skirmishes, so is Genji, and so is Abathur. So it was one of those catering to the compositional advantages, but heroics are there. Invade is going to be dropped. A nice use of the cage from Rich. Dodges it with the vault, but the Twilight Dream ends up hitting Garrosh. Ancestral Healing goes in, keeping Rich alive a little bit longer. No one yet to drop quite yet, but KSV Black prepping everyone there. So much damage from the Malthael. 3 for nothing. Wipe the floor here with the one, and now looking to paint the map red.
Yeah, and KSV Black is like, you think you have high priority targets for us to deal with, like that Genji, like that Illidan? Well, guess what? We've got Maiev and Malthael, the unsung hero here, getting so much value. Rich actually doing a fantastic job baiting all those cooldowns, all the abilities onto himself, only to dodge most of the damage and most of the cooldowns with his vault there. Beautifully done.
Yeah, I mean, that Twilight Dream hits him. He should be one dead Maiev, so very well done there. It did, I mean, it's not like the... Normally when you see those type of situations, the Malfurion, you go, he's gaining no value with that Twilight Dream. That was such a good bait. It was still an amazing bait from Rich, but it was a nice positioning from the one to make sure that it's gaining value somewhere. Getting the silence onto Garrosh, trying to make it harder for him to survive the situation. But things only, you know, slightly grim here for the one. The fact that they are still holding on to this after we just watched Korea get a 4-level lead over Taiwan. This is impressive. Kyoto getting cut out at worst case timing too. Now a huge advantage over these altars.
Yeah,
Kendrick.
5 seconds until 2 altars are going to get activated, and as you said, no Kyocha. That means
but Hugo.
no Malthael. Hugo dodges it with a friend of foe. Nice dash to an allied target, but how much can they do? The left-hand side bell tower is already in possession of KSV Black, and they don't get out themselves, they don't get greedy, but maybe they can find a team fight now. Meng going in, getting rooted by the tether here as well, but they of course have a nice place to fall back on KSV Black. That is
lightly here. The cage is going to be dropped. Keep in mind they're diving this fort. Junkrat is going to go ahead and use huge value there on that Riptire, because that is what every member on the one is going to be saying there. A lot of damage there. KSV, when it's all said and done, what do they claim for themselves? 3 kills at only the cost of Rich.
Yeah, absolutely wonderfully done. And as you said, you see that red bell tower, and if you're the one, you have to pay more respect. You have to pay more attention to it. But that is the playstyle that they're so known for. Full momentum, full speed, full face all the time, with Hugo leading the charge. And it's really hard for them to sometimes know their limits, right? Yeah. Aggression is something that China is known for. But how much calculated risk are you willing to take? And you even need to calculate very carefully first when you play a team like KSV Black's caliber.
I very much agree with you. So I was so lost in the fact that I wondered at the cost of Rich, and I was wondering, what is the cost of Rich? And you know, it's kind of funny. It feels like it is a lot, both for the name and very much the impact the player has here on the teams. Not only because he's that Maiev, but I mean, let's be real here. Everyone knows the name MVP Black, KSV Black, Rich.
Yeah, and that is, you know, Maiev just shines against a team composition like the one has. They're all about clumping together. They're all about rooting and routing around that Arthas, and then you land that one Unroll Bind, and you're going to get so much value. I just want to highlight the Warden cages there as well. So well placed every single time. Keep in mind there's a 1.5 activation timer, so you have to have a little bit of foresight.
Another cage is going to be dropped.
There we go.
Immediately using. Arthas is dead before the fight even begins. Riptire drops in. Hugo gets knocked up. Zato ends up using the Twilight Dream before he dies, hitting all 5 members of KSV Black, but already losing 3 out of the 4 here, out of the majority of the composition for the one. Seems a little bit too late. KSV claim 5 more shots of their own, setting the core of the one now down to 11.
And the boss is still available as well. There's going to be 9 shots at the core of the one. And they, of course, have map control galore. They know exactly where they can move. They have perfect vision on it. And they realize if the one makes it back in time, they're never going to make it to the boss. They just want to go for the bottom battle tower, gain a little bit of balance back here on the battleground. But that is just an easy boss call for KSV Black. Really solid. And that's going to bring them down to 6 HP, 10.
Now we're kind of rounding this moment.
Cast the math. You know,
I know.
They don't hire me for doing math.
I actually, when I played, I used to shot call perfectly every time. Became a caster, can't even do it once.
There we go.
Fight unfolds down below, and the vault is not enough
dead.
to keep Rich alive. The 4-man still aggressing a little bit farther. Ancestral healing brilliantly done there from Sake. Gonna keep Tis alive, but the question is for how long? Keep in mind, Malthael is flanking him from above. Oh, the one needs to tread lightly here. If we see the all-in commitment, nor no tormented soul opportunity.
And it's cool to see.
It's not too concerning.
Any other warrior other than Garrosh probably would have fallen there, but the passive armor that his trade grants to him is just so good. Combine that with beautiful ancestral healings, by the way. Sake, we mentioned his performance there before the game started. Up to this point, he delivered almost every single ability there.
Yeah, he has done a very good job. And, you know, because there was that weird window where, depending on if the old school Kyocha characters were picked for MVP way back, they were still willing to flex him over to the support. I can't help but feel like I have a hard time being impressed when I see Sake make big support plays. Hold on, talking about big plays. Hey up a mid buys a lot of time there. Even eats the, oh man, Twilight Dream hitting 4 members. They need to get more resets than just 1 at this point in time, though. Just losing a Malthael with this much disparity within the HP of the core might be, you know, one of those moments where we go, did you lose too much in the early game here, the one?
Let's see what Hey can do here. Beautifully scouted by Rich. Dodges the Holding Blast as well. Looks like they're only going to get 1 ultra up to this point. Lucky even on the Abathur, trying to use everything they've got to get more body value on the battleground. Hugo and Meng trying really hard to hold the ground, to hold the position, but they get the channel through. And the one, they stay in the game up to this point. That could have been match point potentially.
Yeah, they are able to hold on a little bit longer, but Meng falls very, very low. Zato there with the root, but look at Tis.
Good
knock up there. Flip is going to go on to Genji. Even if it hit Malfurion, either way, that felt like it was a lose-lose scenario. Rich ends up getting a nice dodge. Look at that taunt.
Oh my goodness. That Warlord's challenge was beautiful. Spot on there. Hitting all the targets he wanted to hit. And as good as Zato just played there with that beautiful Twilight Dream, dodging the Riptire with the Ice Block, there's not really much he could have done. The cleanse was too good, preventing the Roots from getting any value. And now with a clean triple kill on the side of KSV Black, they can take all the buildings. They can paint the entire map red.
Yeah, now they got in a situation to where it does feel like it's just going to be the boa constrictor play of KSV Black, choking them out, manipulating the map until you hit that kind of Towers of Doom, lose-lose. Here's your sappers, here's your boss, and here's your altars. Pick one of your 3. You can't stop it all. The major silver lining here is the fact that Illidan compositions generally can be very skirmishy, take very kind of chaotic late-game fights that other compositions can't get away with as conveniently. And because the level is not too far behind other than just this one, maybe there's this moment where if they can get away from this bottom lane, the one can look to force a fight that KSV didn't expect, but they're definitely expecting this one.
Yeah, they really need to fight very hard with this mercenary camps because those could be potential match point. Here comes the Twilight Dream, not getting that much value. The Riptire blows up Genji to pieces, and now one member of the one after the other is falling.
Metamorphosis is used, but with almost everybody else on the side of the one dead, I don't think Hugo can get the 1 versus 4. I mean, mechanically respected within China. Wait a minute. For a moment, he got the bite back there onto Junkrat with the passive mixed with the bite there, and Sake locks it down, seals the deal. Sappers now kind of being escorted by KSV into the core of the one, and that is GG. Game 1 over to KSV Black.
Yeah. Long story short, I think the one did a magnificent job of, you know, turning on the heat in the early stages of the game.
Talking about turning on the heat.
Yeah, there we go.
Gotta feel the heat.
Gotta respect those muscles, man. And